Hey guys, what's up? How's everybody doing? Welcome back to another Friday. It's MLB DFS Slate Rundown, September 4th, 2020. We're talking baseball-specific DFS for the main slate tonight. We're talking pitchers, stacks, some individual one-off bats, everything you need for DFS tonight. Whether that's FanDuel or DraftKings, I've got you covered. This is No Huddle Fantasy Sports. What's up, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another Friday slate rundown here at No Huddle Fantasy Sports. We are talking baseball-specific DFS for tonight's main slate. In general, it's actually a small slate for a Friday. Only 9 games available both on DraftKings and FanDuel, but we're going to dive into it. I think it is an interesting slate. There's a lot of different ways you can go, especially at pitcher, and then on top of that, we have some great stacks in play too. So we're going to cover all that here very shortly, but as always, if you're new here, haven't done so already, if you enjoy these videos, go ahead, make sure you give this video a like, and also make sure you smash that subscribe button. It's the easiest way to help support small creators like No Huddle Fantasy Sports, help support myself. We're continuing to try to grow this channel, and if you're interested in DFS baseball, we publish content every single day, so you don't want to miss out on that. In other news, we're also going to be coming out with some DFS specific stuff for NFL here very, very shortly. Just realized, man, we have NFL starting this upcoming Thursday, so a lot of exciting stuff coming up very shortly. We have an overlap of sports for the first time this year. So it's all going to be, as I mentioned, really exciting stuff coming out. Just make sure you are subscribed to the channel. As I mentioned, the main slate is kind of small for a Friday here. We're talking 9 total games on both sites. If you're playing DraftKings or FanDuel, it really doesn't make a difference. The good news is there's no postponements. There's also not a Coors Field game. A lot of the weird stuff that's been happening today seems like a pretty stable slate, all things considered. And as I mentioned, it's a small slate. Usually Fridays have many more games available, but if you want to get involved in more games, obviously you want to play earlier today. But this video, probably by the time it hits you guys, will be about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So we're talking main slate here. There are several ways you can go with pitching. There's a top tier guy we'll talk about, and then there's some other guys underneath that. You have some top expensive stacks to also go with that are in great spots, and you kind of can't play both. So we're gonna dive into that. We're gonna talk about the ace pitcher you can play, some other pitchers, as well as some stacks that are expensive, and then some underpriced stacks in my opinion. But in general, at first I wasn't really excited, but as I dove into this slate, I think we do have a pretty exciting slate ahead of us. First and foremost, as always, we got to talk about Vegas totals. It's the first thing you should do, in my opinion, when you play MLB DFS, understanding which teams are in the best spots, which pitchers are in the best spots, which teams are expected to score runs, and of course on the flip side, which teams aren't. You can see here there are not very many teams above that 5 total that I like to focus on in terms of stacks. In fact, there's only 3 teams. Chicago White Sox versus a right-hander, I'm not always interested in that. And you have the Mets and the Dodgers both playing at home, so it's a little weird. It's a more difficult night in my opinion for stacks, especially if you want these stacks. They are expensive, especially the Dodgers. But on the flip side, there are a ton of teams below that golden 4 run total we like to focus on when picking pitchers. Everyone wants to talk about probably Yu Darvish today, which you should. I think he's in a great spot. I'm going to be playing a lot of Yu Darvish. But there are a number of other guys in great spots. If you want to just focus on teams that aren't projected to score a lot of runs, you can see here 7 currently. Will that move? Yes. As always, a lot of these lines will move. I am recording this video, putting this content together very early on a Friday, so you're not going to see these same lines later on in the day. Some of them will bump up, some will come down. It's up to you guys, just like weather, to make sure you focus in on that as we get closer to lock. That said, what are we looking at for weather? There are no real rain concerns tonight. That's a really good thing. As always, you want to double check that. There's a couple good spots in terms of wind, double-digit mile-per-hour wind. Sometimes that does help bats, especially in certain stadiums. But you can see here, Philadelphia playing at New York Mets. There is wind blowing out a significant amount in that game. And then St. Louis at Chicago Cubs. When Wrigley, Chicago Cubs Stadium, or Park, I should say, sees that high, heavy wind leaving out, it can certainly lead to some high run score totals. So something interesting to pay attention to. Make sure, though, you check all of this weather before lock, as always, because it will change. And especially I think that St. Louis Chicago game should simmer down a little bit, because there are some interesting pitchers there to consider. And since we touched on pitching, let's just dive into it. I mentioned Yu Darvish. He is the most expensive pitcher on both sites tonight at $11,200 on FanDuel and $11,000 on DraftKings. It's the first time I can remember in a while where FanDuel has priced a pitcher, especially a pitcher we're interested in, above DraftKings. So I do like that DraftKings price a lot. FanDuel, it doesn't matter. I'm still getting my exposure to him in a single pitcher format. So he is pitching at home tonight. Good thing there. Checks that first box. Versus St. Louis. St. Louis projected 3.72 runs on the night. So checks that second box of under 4 runs. And in general, he has pitched excellent so far this year. You can see he has 6 straight starts of 40-plus FanDuel points. Great numbers in that regard. Sporting a 30% K rate on the season or higher. It depends where you look, where you get your data from. But he has, struck guys out left and right all season long. He has projected 7 Ks on the night already, and that is the slate highest, the main slate highest for a pitcher. So again, checking another box, you have a high strikeout guy, projected a number of strikeouts, and he is a slight home favorite. Again, a final box there we want to check. Minus 134, and it's surprising to me. I would have thought that Cubs would have been much higher in terms of a home favorite. So if you're interested in betting and stuff, I do think that should be a higher number. But in general, that's because the guy he's facing, Flaherty, for St. Louis, has also pitched very well, and the Cubs' bats have been cold all season long. So it might be a pitcher's duel tonight. But again, we have winds blowing out, so we're going to have to pay attention to that. That could affect the outcome of runs scored and all of that. Just make sure you tune in right before lock to figure out what that weather situation is. I do want to mention he did pitch already against St. Louis this year. Just a couple of weeks ago at home versus St. Louis, he went 6 innings, had 7 Ks, 1 earned run. So that's kind of, in my opinion, his floor here. I think he can go longer in games. He can certainly get to that double-digit K upside. We've seen him do it. And then 1 earned run, that's very respectable, obviously, but the St. Louis team is not that good. In fact, if you focus on them in 2020, they are decent in terms of WRC plus and WOBA. I think they're like top 15, maybe even close to top 10, but they are bottom 5 in ISO. So that certainly helps out here. They're not hitting for much power versus right-handers, especially in a park that can let the ball get out. With wind and stuff, it's good to see that they are bottom 5 in ISO. So a pretty drastic split there. But overall, Yu Darvish is the man tonight. He's projected significantly higher than any other starter on my board. I'm focusing in on Daily Fantasy Nerd. By the way, it's linked down below, my affiliate link. I use that for everything, all these videos, all my projections. He is projected significantly higher than every other pitcher. So I'm going to be playing Yu Darvish. I'm not going to hide it here. Will he garnish high ownership? I think it depends. Probably, especially on DraftKings where you see that two pitcher format. On FanDuel, though, it's really hard to fit expensive stacks, which I will talk about here shortly with Yu Darvish. So I'll be interested to see, will people favor the stacks or will they favor Darvish? My opinion, you want to favor Darvish, but that's kind of the story there. Now, moving on, I do like Dane Dunning. Now, I don't know too much about this kid. He is a younger guy. He's only made a couple of starts this year, but I do love the price on him at $7,700 on FanDuel, especially on DraftKings $5,800. In my opinion, the Darvish-Dunning DraftKings combo is excellent tonight. He is pitching on the road, which kind of stinks, but he is in Kansas City. Kansas City, I talk about it all the time. Favorable for pitchers, a big ballpark. Ball doesn't move too well there. Kansas City only projected 3.88 runs on the night. So again, we've checked that box there that we want a team that he's facing under 4. This is high risk, high reward, but I don't think there's too much risk here. The only risk is that he's young, and we haven't seen him pitch much, but he has pitched very, very well so far this season. He's coming off an excellent start already. In fact, that start you can see here was against Kansas City, but at home, he went 5 innings, had 7 Ks and 0 earned runs. So he has pitched already excellent against Kansas City. I like to see that. Now, this kid is a high K guy. I wanted to make sure I found another person that could strike out a high number of bats, and I think we found it here. But again, we don't have a ton of major league innings to focus in on. If you go back to minor leagues, he's had a 30% K rate in the minor leagues or higher, depending on, again, where you look at. So excellent numbers there. That is a super high K rate, especially in the minor leagues. In 2020 so far, he has 14 Ks and 9.1 innings. So he only has 1 or 2 starts, or 2 or 3, I should say. I think only 2. That's a 40% K rate. Now, is that realistic? No. Is he Garrett Cole? I don't think so. But again, you love to see that super high K rate. And I mentioned he's coming off a big K game, high output game versus Kansas City already. The team he's facing good. They are a decent road favorite at -164. So even though he is on the road, he's checking that box. Hopefully we'll get in a position to get that W, especially if he can go another 5 innings. He does have a potential pitch limit count to focus in on here. Now, he's pitched right around 89 pitches, I think maybe 90 in his last start. In each start, so he's only had, like I said, about 2. He's bumped up that pitch count, and he's also gone an extra inning. So that's good to see. Now, will he hit 90 here, 100? Let's hope. But even at $5,800, $7,700 on FanDuel, I don't mind if he only gets to 90 with what we've seen of him so far. You're really just focusing on that price, that value here. And in my opinion, Dunning can be the best value tonight. Now, Kansas City, very quickly, I do want to mention, is bottom 5 in WRC Plus and WOBA, and they're overall 11th most in strikeout rate versus right-handers. So again, it's an excellent matchup on top of everything I just discussed. I really do like Dunning tonight. I'm confident in him. I mentioned high risk, high reward. I think it's more high reward than anything, in my opinion. And I'm confident going with him in single pitcher formats and pairing him with someone like Yu Darvish in DraftKings. Now moving on to bats here. I do think the bat situation, the stack situation, is way more difficult than it has been over the last few nights, over the last few weeks, really. But there are a number of guys I'm really going to focus in on. First and foremost, Francisco Lindor, $3,400 on FanDuel, $5,400 on DraftKings. He's playing at home versus Milwaukee, facing Burns, a right-hander. Cleveland projected only 4.39 runs. Now, I say it here, I'm a no-go on Cleveland. I don't want to stack Cleveland tonight, but Lindor still stands out to me. First of all, he is underpriced, especially on FanDuel. It offers a ton of value. This should be a $4,000 shortstop. He's an excellent bat, obviously. You know, he's going to get paid big money one day within the next, maybe even the next season. I'd have to double check on that. But regardless, even though I might not like Cleveland, even though Cleveland's projected a low amount of runs, I still really want to get exposure to Lindor here. Now, he's been hitting the ball very, very well, even though Cleveland might not be doing so as a whole. He has a hit in each of his last 9 games, with 5 of those being multi-hit games. That's absolutely excellent. At $3,400, again, we're talking super value there if he can kind of repeat that same thing. It's a favorable split. He's facing a right-hander, 350 WOBA, 247 ISO when he faces righty, so excellent number. He is a switch hitter, so he can, flip-flop when Burns comes out of the game. Burns himself, I'll be perfectly honest with you, I list him towards the end in other considerations. I think he has some drastic splits. He's not very good versus lefties, but he is excellent versus righties. I'd take a chance possibly on him tonight, but in general, I will take Lindor against him. I'm going to favor this elite bat here. He's sorry, I already mentioned it here, but Burns, excellent versus right-handers, but can struggle versus lefties, to the tune of 466 for an xFIP and 402 WOBA. So really, really bad numbers right there versus lefties. But again, he is very good versus righties, so I'm not very interested in full-blown stacking Cleveland, but I want to get exposure to Lindor. Now, another guy I think is underpriced. He has been injured. He's been out a couple of games. He's been back for maybe a week now, so he should be coming around, should be getting healthy here. $3,200 for Yoan Moncada is an excellent price on FanDuel. I mean, just compared, he's almost double the price on DraftKings. Yes, typically DraftKings pricing is more, but that drastic difference there is something I want to take advantage of, especially on FanDuel. So he's playing on the road in Kansas City. I already talked about his pitcher Dunning. I do like some of the bats for the White Sox. I don't like a full-blown stack, but Singer, the right-hander he's facing, is just not very good. They've had experience against Singer already this season, so maybe that goes in their favor. The White Sox in general projected 5.02 runs on the night, so a very excellent run projection for the team. And Moncada himself offers a cheap price, a value price, maybe even close to his season low. I think 32 or 3,100 was his season low. So again, you're getting him towards the bare minimum in terms of typically what he goes for. Cheap exposure, really. That's what you're getting here to that Chicago White Sox run line. Do I believe in them as a stack? No, but they will score runs. Vegas believes in it, and he should be hitting higher when they face right-handers. In fact, he typically hits second in the order, bumps down versus lefties, but does bump up versus righties. So you have to like that. Getting that exposure on a road team that's going to score a number of runs. Yes, check those boxes for me here. Moncada sticks out. Now, to quickly mention some stats here, he's hitting 351 in terms of a WOBA and has a 211 ISO versus righties. So very, very above average good numbers versus right-handers. Singer himself in 2020 has not been good versus, this should say lefties, but a 522 xFIP, 322 WOBA, 1.74 home runs per 9. Again, that's to lefties. I'm sorry I mismarked that. I must have copied it from somewhere else. But again, Singer certainly can be taken advantage of by left-handed bats. I really like the price of $3,200 on FanDuel. Again, favorite bat here from Chicago White Sox. I do like Moncada. Moving on to the last two guys I want to mention here, and I have to laugh because if you followed any of my other videos, you know I always mention Jock Peterson. I just keep playing him. He's going to hit multiple home runs in one game very soon, and I'm going to take down every tournament when that happens. But here he is again. I understand if you guys are fed up with him, feel free to ignore this, but $2,700, one of the cheapest price tags you could get on him all season. $3,400 on DraftKings, so a value price tag on him here. He's playing at home versus Colorado. Zenzantella, if I pronounce it correctly, the right-hander for Colorado. Not a very good pitcher, and I broke it down. He's not very good on the road either, so don't just say, oh, that's because he's a Colorado pitcher. But in general, the right-hander for Colorado tonight, not very good, especially versus lefties. The big thing here is the Dodgers have projected 5.49 runs on the night. I believe that's currently the highest for tonight's main slate, and you're getting exposure here to a guy that's probably going to be hitting 6th. Maybe we get lucky. He has been bumped up to 1 occasionally. Will that happen? I don't think so. I think they're kind of getting fed up with him too, or they're at least leaving him lower in the lineup. But again, you're getting that cheap exposure at a nice salary to that Los Angeles Dodgers high projected run line. Now, he's had a slow start to the season, can't deny it, but I'm willing to risk it with him tonight at that price tag. He has such a big upside in terms of power versus right-handers, in terms of the ability to put multiple balls out of the park any given night, and that's what you need, especially in tournaments. So he's a 362 WOBA versus righties as a career, excellent number there, a massive 263 ISO versus righties, and a 130 WRC plus. Again, so you can see it's just a matter of time before this guy starts hitting. Yes, he's young, but he's been in the league for a few years now. It's not like I'm just talking about 10 innings of at-bats, but in general, again, we should see a positive regression. It is coming at some point. I hope to be a part of that train when it is. I should be. I'm playing him almost every time I can versus a righty. But he offers, as I mentioned, double-digit double dong potential, however you want to say it. But this guy can hit multiple home runs in a single game. In fact, if you date back to last year versus Colorado, he had 2 double-digit home run games. So I think he had two home run games in a row. One of those was a Zenzantella start. Now, I don't think he had 2 against this guy, but it's just to show you that's what you can get from Jock Peterson at any given time. He was in a home run derby. He has a ton of power. I'm playing him tonight. Now, moving on from that, a guy probably a little bit more safer here that I'm more confident in, Jeff McNeil at $2,600. Again, excellent price on FanDuel. $3,500 on DraftKings also is a great price. He's playing at home, but it's against Philadelphia, and he's more importantly playing Arrieta, a righty that just strikes no left-handers out and lets the ball fly. He's a really bad pitcher currently. I honestly can't believe he did what he did in Chicago, but he's certainly not doing that in Philly. I regress, though. The New York Mets tonight for McNeil projected 5.29 runs. I believe that's second on the board. So similar to Jock Peterson, excellent price, and you're getting cheap exposure to that New York Mets run line. Now, this dude, unlike Peterson, has been on a tear. He has a hit in each of his last 7 games, 3 of those being multi-hit games, so we like to see that. He's seeing the ball well. He also has excellent BVP versus Arrieta. He's 13 for 20. That's a 650 average, has 2 extra base hits and a home run. But more importantly, what I like to see, if you like BVP or don't, whatever. I understand you need numbers, and we have 20 at-bats here. But the one thing I do like to see, in 20 at-bats, he has not struck out. So that at least tells me Arrieta is a low strikeout guy versus McNeil. McNeil is seeing him well. He's not striking out. The ball's in play. That gives you more opportunity in daily fantasy sports. That's what I like here. But solid splits versus right-handers in general. 381 WOBA, 194 ISO, well above average. Arrieta, as I mentioned, he's struggling in 2020. He's coming off a 7 earned run start versus Atlanta. I think we're going to see that again tonight. We're going to jump to the next slide here. You'll see I really like the Mets, but if I'm going to pick one single guy from that Mets lineup tonight, I'm definitely going to play at a value price. It helps with your Yu Darvish type of player, Jeff McNeil. Okay, now parlaying directly off my McNeil play there, I do want to talk about stacks here. And the first stack I do want to mention is the New York Mets. I also followed it up with the Los Angeles Dodgers here. And you will notice both these teams are the 2 highest run projection teams on the slate. Typically, I'm not worried about that when I begin my research, so I don't mean to just give you guys the highest run projection teams. They're in great spots. It's just how it ended up. I do my research, I split it out, I figure out which pitchers I want to attack, I look at who they're facing. Both the Mets and the Dodgers lined up perfectly with the guys they're facing in terms of, having a great offense versus that type of pitcher. And boom, I ended up with the top 2 in terms of run projection. So we're right in line with Vegas. I think that's a good thing here. Hopefully we don't see a ton of ownership. I'll talk about that here very briefly. But the first team I want to mention, I do want to stack the New York Mets. They're a little bit more affordable than the Dodgers. They're playing at home versus Philadelphia. I already talked about Arrieta, the righty for Philly. Philly in general, Arrieta in general, just not very good. I mean, you can see here just very, very bad in 2020, giving up 19 earned runs in 26 innings. So far in 2020, he's done nothing. He hasn't been good since his time in Chicago. I'm willing to basically stack against him in almost any format, but especially tonight with the Mets. The good thing is they're the 2nd highest run projection team total on the night. As I mentioned, that's just lining up perfectly with Vegas. We're kind of seeing the same thing here. Arrieta has a very, very low K percent. That's something key to focus in on when focusing on stacks. By that, I mean 15% to lefties, 20% to righties. He's not really striking anyone out, meaning the ball's in play. It just gives you more of an opportunity in daily fantasy sports and fantasy baseball in general. You want to focus in on that. So I do like how low his K percent is. He's also top 2 to 3 in almost every stat. And by top 2 to 3, I mean he is the worst in almost every stat versus left-handers. I mentioned that because the New York Mets are absolutely loaded with left-handed bats. In fact, I've seen them at times deploy 7 or 8 out of their 9 players be left-handers. So that's just, they should do it tonight. If they're managing the game right, they can certainly take advantage of an Arrieta that just struggles versus lefties here. And on top of that, the New York Mets, being that they have so many lefties, are an excellent team overall in 2020 versus righties as a lineup. They have a 122 WRC plus, that's 3rd overall in baseball, 3rd best, 348 WOBA, 4th overall best in baseball, a 175 ISO, so they do come down a little bit in terms of power, but that's okay. 15th overall, they're still top half of the league. And they only have a 21.4% K rate. That's 23rd in baseball, meaning they're bottom 10 or they're top 10, however you want to look at it. They're not striking out, that much versus left or versus right-handers. So you have a guy in Arrieta that's not striking anyone out, and you have a team of left-handers that's not striking out versus right-handers, and they're doing very well as a season on the season as a whole versus right-handers. I just love the situation for the Mets tonight. I will be stacking them definitely tonight. The other team I want to mention, if you can afford it here, the Los Angeles Dodgers are in a great spot. Now, they are playing also at home. I got 2 at-home teams here. It's a little weird. That's why I talked about it earlier. It's a little weird night for stacks. I don't always like to take home stacks, but I think it's a good spot here. Again, versus Colorado, Senzatella, the right-hander for Colorado. This team, the Dodgers, if the Mets smash righties, god damn, these Dodgers absolutely smash right-handers. In fact, they're number 1 in every stat versus right-handers on the season with a 126 WRC plus, again number 1, 356 WOBA, 246 ISO. So look at their numbers compared to simply the Mets and just how much better they are. And you're only talking 1 or 2 spots up in overall ranking. So the Dodgers, who's on that team. The Bellingers, the Seagers, a ton of lefties, your Muncies, Jock Peterson, who's going to hit a homer tonight. All these great players, these great left-handers, these powerful left-handers, going against Senzatella, the righty tonight, in a great spot. Now, the good thing is, on top of all of that, those great numbers, they have very, very few strikeouts, 20.3% of the time. So that is 2nd least in baseball, 28th overall. So they're not striking out a lot, a good thing there. They're getting healthy. For example, Bellinger is now back in the lineup. He's been back in the lineup for a couple of days. They were missing a couple key pieces there, but he's doing, everyone's doing well in terms of health and back in that lineup. Senzatella, career away versus lefties, 517 xFIP. So I only mention that because a lot of people will say, oh, he's a Colorado pitcher. He does better, on the road. When he's at home, all his numbers are inflated. Well, no. In fact, if you look at his numbers, even on the road versus lefties, this dude sucks. He sucks versus lefties. 5.17 xFIP. So we're going to take advantage of that tonight for sure in any way we can. I mentioned they are very expensive. Guys like Seager are really getting expensive. Bellinger's always been expensive. Your Betts is expensive. You're going to have to get creative tonight to try to fit it. I think if you go with your Dunnings, yeah, you can do it definitely. And I'm going to be certainly doing that on FanDuel. But if you go with Yu Darvish, you're going to have to play around and get some of those more value bats. Some of the guys I mentioned, like Peterson, will get you exposure to this team. Last thing I mentioned here, pitching price plus lineup may lower ownership. So by that I mean the Dodgers could be one of those teams, it could be one of those nights where the highest projected run team, in fact the highest scoring run team overall, ends up being a lower owned stack simply because it's not possible with Yu Darvish, the most expensive pitcher. So we'll have to see. It'll be interesting how that plays out. Last thing I'll mention here, 5.44 is that team total. So that is number one on the board. So far as I understand, it hasn't changed. Could change, could get higher as we get closer to lock. And so that wraps up, the main point of this video, all the stacks and pitchers and one-off bats I do like to talk about. I will mention a couple random guys here and other highlights. It's a smaller slate, so we don't have a lot of ways to go. You can see many of these are Dodgers or Mets, guys that you should be getting because of the stacks I mentioned. But Corbin Burns, pitcher from Milwaukee, I'll highlight him. I talked about him earlier. Now, we're going to take a bat against him in Lindor, but this dude has some good numbers, especially versus righties. Cleveland has not been that good this year as an offense. He's an interesting play at a little bit of a cheaper price tag. He has been very, very excellent, very good versus right-handers. So depending on how many lefties are in that lineup, how many switch hitters, I could have some interest in him. I just want to mention that very quickly. Anthony Rizzo for Chicago has some great BVP numbers tonight. Someone I would consider as a one-off from that Chicago lineup. Brandon Nimmo, if there's going to be another guy I'm interested in from that Mets lineup as a one-off, he's in an excellent spot, offers a great price, excellent value price on him. Michael Brantley tonight for Houston. He's been back in the lineup. One of my favorite left-handed, underrated in my opinion, bats overall. Has a good price on him, so if you want to get some different exposure to another game, that Houston game there, Michael Brantley in a good spot. And last but not least here, Nomar Mazara, outfielder for Chicago White Sox. It's really a price play on him. Very, very cheap play. He has not batted any higher than 7th. He was really good for Texas, a left-handed bat, in a good spot tonight. We talked about some of his teammates, but if you want to get some more exposure to that White Sox at a cheap price tag, I think he's a good, decent play there. And last but not least, if I'm stacking any other team tonight, that will be the Philadelphia Phillies. I do think your Bryce Harpers, your Didi Gregoriuses are in good spots tonight. I do like the Philly stack as my third stack, and really I don't like any other stack besides that. So it's going to be a pretty narrow night for me tonight in terms of stacks, pitchers, everything I just mentioned. But in general, that really wraps it up. Hopefully these videos are helpful for you guys. You can see the arrows down below pointing to the comment section or pointing to the description section. I have a free MLB main slate pitcher guide. It's a PDF, you download it. It's going to show you all the stats I just talked about. There's nothing to do. There's no sign up. Just click it, open it. Hopefully it's helpful for you guys. Please comment down below if it's helpful, if I could add anything to it, if you guys find anything missing, please just let me know down below in the comment section. Also, Daily Fantasy Nerd, I talk about them in every single video, man. They are the cream of the crop in terms of an optimizer. I have a link down below. It is an affiliate link, so it does benefit me. It's the only thing that benefits me for doing these videos, outside of helping you guys, of course. But please, feel free to check it out. As I mentioned, football's coming out, so they'll offer that with it too. It's an excellent baseball optimizer, giving you all the values, everything you need for the night's action, and everything is kind of compiled in one area, so it is very, very helpful. Again, check down below. I believe you get a free month by signing up under my link. And so that really wraps it up. I thank you guys so much for hanging in there with me. This video did extend a little bit here. Hopefully I can shorten it through editing or something, but for a 9-game slate, hey, it's pretty interesting tonight. We'll see how it plays out. I wish you guys the best of luck, but hey, if you're new here, if you haven't done so already, if you're following DFS baseball, if these videos are helpful, whatever it is, man, please just make sure you subscribe to the channel. And again, like this video if you find it useful. I'd really, really appreciate that. I'm very thankful for how fast this channel has grown. Not super fast, but man, we're grinding it out and we're doing well. You can ask anyone that will, hopefully somebody will comment. If you followed any of these freaking videos in the last couple weeks, you should be absolutely crushing MLB DFS because the picks have been absolutely fire. So make sure you follow us here at No Huddle Fantasy Sports. You can see here at No Huddle FS over on Twitter. I'll put out some last minute thoughts before lock. Of course, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. But outside of that, man, thank you guys so much for hanging in there with me. Good luck tonight, and I will catch you in the next video.